Your relationship isn't stuck because you don't love each other. It's stuck because you've fallen into this transactional cycle of connection and disconnection, where everything becomes, I'll give when you give. And both of you are really just waiting for the other person to go first to see how you want to react to that. And this kills connection, right? If there's no real reason to change, no leverage, you can stay stuck like this for months. I've seen couples even stay stuck in this cycle for years. Today, I'm going to break down why this happens, what leverage really is, and the two kinds of leverage that you can use in a relationship, and how to use it to invite your partner into genuine transformation, the kind that actually lasts. But before we dive in, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos. We drop 2 of them a week, and grab your free communication blueprint in the description below. It'll help you have these conversations without them blowing up or blowing your own leg off. So first, I want to talk about why relationships stay stuck, right? Really, it's around this transactional nature where one person is only willing to give so much as long as there's some form of reciprocity. And that's how we get into the stalemate, right? It's really not a relationship of generosity. It's a relationship of condition. And fairness plays a big part of this, right? If we feel like we're in a relationship where we've been getting the bad end of the stick for a long time, well, then we just plant our heels in and wait for the partner to make up for it until we feel like it's being beneficial for us to even the score. And this idea of scorekeeping, focusing on, fairness really takes away from an intimate connection, this idea of serving your partner and leading from a place of generosity. And oftentimes in a relationship, this leads to emotional distance. It can lead to resentment, right? Whether spoken or unspoken. And oftentimes we move into this mode of self-protection, right? So we avoid being vulnerable. We go into situations where we're quite guarded. And one of the things that you can remember is that self-protection rarely leads to connection. And over time, couples tend to normalize this idea, right? And you've probably heard it. It is what it is. We've just been married a long time. It's how it's supposed to be. And that then continues deeper into the cycle of normalizing a roommate stalemate or a dead marriage, if you will, that's just around détente and is very transactional. And this is where some couples need some form of leverage to create change. And so what is leverage, right? Well, in relationships specifically, it's something that is important enough, that brings enough meaning to generate actual change when necessary. It's not about manipulation, right? It's really about clarity of what the stakes are. And we can do this for ourselves as individuals, right? You think about, the perfect example that I always use is somebody eats like crap their whole life, doesn't exercise, and then they go to the doctor and the doctor's like, you're going to die in 6 months if you don't do a radical change. Well, now the stakes, in this case, literally your own life is on the line if you don't change. And so you see that all the time. Now, because the stakes are amplified and your life is going to end if you continue to live this way, then you create the change. Now, that's an extreme example, but there's all kinds of leverage that we can introduce, positive and negative, to relationships, not from a place of manipulation, but from a place of love and leadership and direction. So if you break down the two types of leverage, right? The one that I always encourage my couples and my clients to step into is always positive leverage first. This is the aspiration, the dream, the thing you want to move towards. Now, if you're in a place where your marriage is kind of neutral, right? And you're just in that transactional nature and there's not a lot of passion and fire, positive leverage is a great way to start creating action and transformation, not only for yourself, but for your relationship. And so think about, just talking to your partner or being real with yourself and saying, hey, I want to laugh together again. I want to have fun. I want to bring playfulness together again. Oftentimes, as soon as you say that, there's a resistance to why you can't do it. Well, we can't because this and that and this, because we're too busy. We have the kids. We can't get a sitter. We don't have enough money. And immediately barriers start to go in the way. And again, that's a protective mechanism, right? And shifting from we can't because to we can if really starts to allow you to step into collaboration. Now, the important thing is you want to find leverage that your partner is also on board with. So if you're like, hey, the leverage for me is I want to have a really great sexual relationship, but your partner hasn't experienced great sex with you in months or years, well, that leverage is not going to be as strong for them, because what they're realizing is like, I'm actually okay with not having sex. So to them, the positive leverage of having a fulfilling sexual relationship is not something that they can imagine or connect to. And so you have to try to understand what their positive leverage is as well, and then kind of create a Venn diagram, right, that comes together. And what's in the middle of that Venn diagram that has your leverage, their leverage, and then common leverage that you can collaborate towards. That's where I often encourage couples to start. That could be like having family time together, right? Really great family time. That might be like having a getaway just for the two of you, where you can just be together again, right? No pressure, just connection. And so these are types of positive leverage that then are worth moving towards to create change. And the reality is this leverage, this dream doesn't get created without the action steps. So that's the idea of positive leverage, right? It's what you're dreaming about. It's I want my kids to grow up to see a loving relationship as a model of relationship for them. I want my kids to grow up to see their parents being in love so they can create that for themselves, right? For me and my wife, Kate, that's a big part of the reason we exemplify a healthy relationship, is we want to create a model of relationship for our kids so they can grow up to create it for themselves as well. Now, the other side of it is negative leverage. And I often caution people to step into negative leverage, because a lot of people, especially now when, kind of marriages are under so much attack, is that we are throwing out negative leverage all the time. Do this or else, do that or else. And it becomes like this power dynamic that's really not grounded in a place of love and firmness, right? And health. It's grounded in a place of scarcity and manipulation. So for a lot of my clients, what I always tell them is make sure that you have done your own work, and that if you decide to introduce negative leverage, you are honest about the change needing to happen, right? And so if you think about negative leverage in a relationship, that's common is maybe your partner is not spending time with you or going on dates with you. So if that's a non-negotiable for you, right? If you really want to focus on one-on-one connection with your partner and they are unwilling to, that might be a piece of leverage that will be a make or break for you, right? So if after you've done your own work and you invite your partner out on these dates and you set it up and they're just unwilling to go on a date with you, well, now you can introduce a piece of negative leverage. And negative leverage might be a threat to the relationship. It might be a threat to the connection, right? So something like, hey, for me, I really want to experience one-on-one time with us together that's enjoyable for both of us. If that's something you're unwilling to do, and if this continues where you're not willing to come out on those one-on-one dates with me in a way that works for both of us, I just can't see a future for us, right? And that's an example of introducing negative leverage in your relationship. Now, again, I caution you because it's important for you to be honest with yourself. If you're not willing to end a relationship because your needs aren't being met, if you're just like, you know what, I'm actually okay with being a sexless marriage because I got a big house and a boat, and that's fine, right? Well, then don't introduce negative leverage because then you're just going to sound like a person who doesn't follow through on their stuff. And if your word can't be trusted, then you can't be trusted. And so this is why I caution people, because they think about this idea like, oh, I'm going to introduce negative leverage and kind of it's going to create this threat where they're going to do something. But then if they call your bluff and they're like, fine, it's okay, you can end the relationship. And then you're like, never mind. Well, no, that's not going to work, right? So that's why you have to do your own work and be honest. And you're not just throwing out negative leverage lickety split. And that's why I always tell people to start with positive leverage, right? Think about another piece of negative leverage, which is, again, I talked about kids earlier, but like the harm to the kids, right? If you and your partner in a relationship where you're always yelling and screaming at each other and you're fighting and you're calling each other names and you're saying bad names, and it's really like an unhealthy conflict environment in the home, well, the negative leverage is this is hurting our kids. And so this needs to stop. So if we don't go and get help, and if we don't learn how to communicate when tensions are high, the marriage has to end because now it's hurting our kids, right? And so that would be another piece of negative leverage that could be introduced in order to create change. Now, again, you have to be real with yourself, because if your partner's like, no, I just want to keep fighting, I don't care what happens to our kids, right? I'm sure they wouldn't say that because it's their kids too, but who knows? But anyways, then you really have to be honest with yourself and say, okay, well, based on that, I'm going to move forward with creating some space. I'm no longer choosing to fight, and I'm going to have to make a decision about how I want to engage with you in this home. Because again, you can stop the fighting, right, by creating a boundary and stepping away, but that creates a bigger conversation, which is, what type of relationship do you want to exemplify for your kids? So oftentimes, introducing negative leverage can be a mover for change, but it has to come from a place of loving firmness. The other thing I really want to say is that, and this is like a really key part, right, is oftentimes what happens is we project our own leverage onto others. So I was talking to a man, last week, and he was saying, I don't get why my wife wants to end our marriage. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. We got the big house of our dreams. We make a lot of money. We have 5 kids together. And they were essentially explaining all the reasons why they should continue to be married. But it was coming from his perspective. That was his leverage. That was the reason he was willing to fight for the relationship. And so what he was doing in that moment is, instead of seeking to understand what his partner's leverage was, whether there even was any leverage for them, he was just projecting his leverage onto his partner. And then he was confused why she was making the decisions that she's making. And that is really important, because if you just continue to project your leverage onto everybody else, you're not actually seeking to understand what's going on for them. You don't actually know what motivates them. Instead, you're just projecting onto them your own leverage, and then you're wondering why they're making the choices they're making. And that can really be detrimental and dysfunctional in a relationship, because you're not actually having a relationship with a person. You're not leading to curiosity, right? And so really stepping into that and understanding, like, hey, am I projecting my own idea of leverage, or do I know what's worth fighting for with my partner here? Do I know what it is that they're trying to avoid by making the choices that they're making, or what they want to create by making the choices that they're making? And if you're in a situation where your partner maybe is unwilling to go out on dates with you, it's like, is there a type of date that you would be willing to go on that would make you excited to go on, right? That's worth wanting for you. Or is there something that actually could be introduced here as like a make or break that would lead you to say, okay, I'd rather go on dates with you consistently and learn how to do that than to, be alone. And that is your partner's 2-choice dilemma in these moments, right? And I know this is really hard to understand, but we want to make sure that we're always leading with positive leverage instead of just introducing negative leverage all the time. And so the first step here, if you really start thinking about it, it's, you want to identify the cycle, right? So notice what cycle you're in. Is it give or take? Is it you're always trying to get them to do something so that you can get what you want? Is it this kind of covert contract of like, what is it you need so I can give it to you, and then you'll be happy with me and then I'll get what I want? Maybe it's you withholding, right? Maybe they're withholding. So really understanding that cycle. Then lead with positive leverage. Start introducing conversations about what it is that you want to create, seeking to understand what it is they want to create, right? What's an ideal relationship look like for them? What do they wish they did more of in their life? How can you collaborate together to help them move towards that? And for you, being honest as well of like what you would like more of and whether or not that aligns with them. Because if you're like, hey, this is my dream, and they're like, I don't care about that. I don't really want to travel the world. Well, then that means that that's great for your leverage to motivate you to do something, but it's not really going to motivate them to change things, right? So now you have to think about what's the leverage that you have together. And then the last part is, if needed, right? If you're in a really tough spot, think about negative leverage that can be introduced. I know for a lot of men, right, it's around legacy. It's the kids, right? How their kids will be affected. The discontentment of their partner. A lot of men go into this type of work because their partner is just unhappy with being with them as a husband. And so they want to improve themselves to do right by their partner and to be in a relationship with a partner who is satisfied, right? And enjoys being with the man. And so start to think about that in terms of introducing negative leverage. Forms of leverage could also be around things that are make or break, deal breakers for you. Right? Again, if you're okay with being in a sexless marriage, that's okay. Power to you. It really depends on you and the relationship that you want to create. But if to you, being in a sexless marriage is a make or break, well, you have to be honest with yourself first and say, am I really willing to end my relationship if it's sexless? If the answer is yes, then that's an idea of negative leverage. If the answer is no, well, then don't mention it because maybe you don't have any leverage. Maybe there's nothing strong enough for you to change the situation. Maybe there's nothing strong enough for your partner to change the situation. And then therefore, it's going to keep you in the same cycle. And that really is about being radically honest with yourself. And the last part is, really creating this container so that you can stay consistent with it. A lot of times what happens is, as we make this agreement, and maybe you said, hey, like, I want to do this thing, I want to go out on more dates, and your partner's like, okay, I'm up for that. Well, then nothing happens after that. And so you have to back it up with some action. And in that moment, what often happens is you're looking over to your partner to see what action they're taking. And you're like, well, I'm doing all my stuff. How come you're not doing anything? Again, you have to focus on generosity. And so it's like, if you want to go out on more dates and your partner said yes, well, lead that. Set up some dates, go out with them, invite them out, start modeling behavior of taking action. And then celebrate that. Instead of just moving the goalposts and being like, that was a fine day, but we need to do more. No, celebrate that you did the thing that you wanted to do. Celebrate that the positive leverage worked and you took the effort together to create that. Because what gets celebrated gets repeated. I see this time and time again. People are not celebrating little wins. And so it's like, our partner does the thing we want them to do, or they're taking the action that works for both of you. And then we just like ignore it. We don't say anything. We don't praise it. We don't go back and say, hey, I really appreciate that you stepped into that and came out on the date with me. I know this is something we've been working on for a while, and I just want to say how thankful I am that you came out and put the energy. Instead, we just say nothing. And then we wait a month and we're like, hey, how come you haven't planned a date? I planned the last one. And we're right back in the same cycle, right? So think about how you can start celebrating these small wins, because we want to amplify the positive in order to encourage our partner and ourselves to repeat that, right? Because we want to move towards that life energy. And so remember, right, if we're going to recap, remember the transactional cycle, the avoidance of these hard conversations, it kills connection. It kills intimacy, right? Leverage is the key to create movement in long-term relationships. If there's no positive or negative leverage, well, it makes sense that you're going to continue to stay stuck in the same cycles. Because, the reality is love is part of it, but oftentimes it's not enough to create change when that change is uncomfortable, because we're always going to prioritize comfort over growth unless we have a form of leverage. And then remember to discover their leverage, but start with positive leverage before even entering into negative leverage. It's possible that you could create change by just using positive leverage. So start there. It's way more inspirational to have conversations about what's possible and then think about how you can make that happen instead of just giving ultimatums and thinking about, hey, like, because this is not happening, I'm going to have to do this. No, instead, think about the positive, think about the dreams, inspire yourself, inspire your partner to step into what's possible, and then lead from a place of generosity and start modeling, creating that after you've both agreed on leverage that works for both of you guys. So again, subscribe if you want more relationship tools. If you found this helpful, you can comment below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions around leverage. I'm more than happy to answer them. And grab your free communication blueprint, right? It's a set of emails and videos that I send out to you to give you the step-by-step way to really connect emotionally with your partner, understand them, but also advocate yourself in a way that is inviting and exciting for your partner to respond to. Cheers. See you in the next video.